Okay, I'm going to show you how to make a leaf using a method. It's called like a reverse taper. I learned this from Alex Steele video, which he learned from Brian Brazil. So we're going to use probably about a 10 millimeter, maybe a 12 millimeter round stock. And I'm going to square it off first, and I'm going to create an isolation at the tip, and then taper the tip, and that will be what will become my leaf. And then I'm going to create a reverse taper and taper it back the width of the anvil, and that will become my stem. And I use the width of the anvil because it's just a good measurement point. That way I can form consistency and stuff. And I'll show you once I get in here, and you can play with it, and depending on how long you want your leaf, you can change that isolation point. So don't focus too much on it unless you're making a batch of stuff and you want them all to be the same. But you can really focus on that. So I'm actually using a rounding hammer by Ethan Hardy that he learned from Alex Steele. I've just got a cheap anvil here that I've softened the edges on with a file, and that really helps when creating a leaf on the anvil, because where the leaf transitions into the stem, if you have a sharp angle on your anvil here, it will pinch it down really hard, and it has a tendency to create a stress riser and ends up snapping off there. So it really helps having a radius to work off of, and as well as this rounding side of your hammer to help really efficiently move metal faster. And it just seems to reduce the stress on that area and prevent it from breaking off. Because when I start making leaves, I made a bunch, and it was looking good, and then it would just snap off at the end. So I've got it in the forge here, a nice almost white heat. So we'll bring the camera in and we'll get started here. So I'm going to take it out of the fire here, and the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I got a good flat piece, but I'm actually going to square my material off. And this is a standard operating procedure. Say if you were making a hook or something like that as a beginner, creating that nice square piece. It just helps keep your piece consistent, and where you can rotate it on these nice flat spots, and it just creates a good consistency. So there you can see I've created a nice like clean edges and stuff. And so now I'm going to go to the edge of the anvil here, and I'm going to use the flat side of my hammer, and I'm just going to create at half on, half off kind of blow at an angle. And then playing with this angle here and how sharp you want to make the end of this really affects how the tip of the leaf turns out. Some people rotate all the way around. I just do the two sides. I found that to work just as good. So you can see we're losing a little bit of heat, but this next heat where I've squared it off, I've created a little bit of a point there. You can make that as steep as you want to kind of really play with the different designs. And then I'm going to heat it up, and this next heat I'm going to do my isolations. All right, I'm ready for my next heat where I'm going to create that isolation for the leaf. So I'm going to take it out of the forge here, and I like to work pretty quick at this. And you can do as many heats as you want, don't rush. But I like to work quick, it's just more efficient that way, and I can keep that metal hot by enforcing a lot of force into that metal, and it just makes it easier to work. So I'm going to pull it out here. I'm just going to eye it. This is a one-off thing, so I'm just going to sort of eye how my isolation needs to be. So if you look here at the anvil, I'm going about, 3/4 of an inch or so. And then I'm going to do a half on, half off blow on the edge of the anvil. And I'm doing that pretty hard. And I'm going to rotate. And I'm going to rotate. So you can see when I hit it on the anvil there, I created these two opposite shoulders of each other, so I can rotate on those two angles and really play that. So at this point, I like to keep the metal hot, because if you start to work that shoulder, that smaller shoulder too much, and that's where you start getting those cracks and stuff, and the leaf will break off. So I'm going to throw it back in for the next heat. Next heat, I'm going to take it there. I'm going to use those isolations that I made in my previous heat, and it'll kind of like lock it into the anvil so I can rotate on those axes. And then I'm just going to start working the material. And I can start drawing that material backwards, creating that reverse taper off of that. And then I'm going to show you the next technique, which at this point you can keep drawing that material out and just create your stem from that point and grow it out. But I'm going to do something a little different that I learned from Alex Steele, is I'm going to go the opposite of where I created my shoulders there. And these little shoulders, I got a little rough on them, but don't worry about it. You can always clean it up with a file. I'm going to go the opposite of what, so essentially the shoulder that I created on the leaf is going to be sticking up, sticking up, sticking up. And I'm going to do the same thing I did here, but I'm going to hit right about here. And it's going to create a isolation opposite of the leaf. And then I'll rotate. I'm losing a lot of heat there, but you can see that I'm starting to create those two isolations, so I'm going to put some more heat in it. But do my next heat, and I'm going to work on that isolation that I was working on the last. So I'm going to find it here. It's going to be the opposite of the leaf I was talking about. That's better. And you don't want to work this too thin right now. I probably actually got that a little bit too thin right there, but that's okay, because you don't want to hit it anymore after that point. So I'm going to work on this bulge that I've created there, and I'm going to actually draw it out into a consistent leaf that will, or stem that will go across the anvil, and that's what we'll work on next. All right, so this next heat I'm going to work a little bit faster, because essentially at this point I'm just manipulating that metal and just creating a reverse taper, just like if you were creating a hook or a taper to a tip to get ready for a scroll or something like that. It's the same principle, so I'm just going to work a little bit faster so I can make the most of my heat. And you can work on this side. You see that material starting to grow there, so try not to hit your transition like I just did. And then you can a good heat and be gentle with it. But you can also bring it here to this side of the anvil. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but the way I'm working at this rhythm, you can see the material lighting back up with my hammer blows. And that's one of the perks of kind of working at a rhythm. You can kind of keep some of that heat back in there and get more out of it. I'm going to keep working on that taper till it's the width of my anvil here. So it also doesn't matter when you create your leaf as well. Sometimes I will do it pretty early on, and other times I will kind of wait till the end so I've got a longer stem to work with, but it's really up to you what you want to do. So I'll go in for another heat. Let's see if we can get it across that anvil this time. So that's pretty darn close right there. We can work on really cleaning it up a lot. All right, so we're just going to work on. I'm just going to kind of flatten things out a little bit, round it off. I don't know if you can see it on the camera there, but
I was talking about it cracking a lot. Where I work this shoulder right here a little bit too much, you can see that I've created a crack. But luckily I've got enough material to work with. So I'm going to use the rounding side, and I'm going to use it at a really different angle. So I'm going to bring it the face of my leaf up, and then this all depends on the look you're going for. Sometimes I like to go with this angle like this and hit it here, and what it'll do is kind of create a ridge down the center, and it gives it just kind of a more organic look. But you know, it's totally what you're feeling, what you want to, the look you're going for, the project you're working on.
So one thing you can do because that tip wants to always heat up the fastest, so it's like if you make knives or something, if you got water ready, and I'll show you, you can just tip and cool the end of that off, so that way it doesn't move anymore, and you can just move different parts of the leaf the way that you want. So you can see I cooled it off there. So. And that's pretty good for demonstration purposes. Definitely not my best looking leaf, but like I said, you can sit here and play with it. You can use a file or just sheer practice will really help work on these shoulders. My shoulders are a little bit uneven, but I could sit here and do multiple heats and really clean it up, you know. You know, I'm happy with that. I mean, it reads like a leaf. The next thing that I'll do, or that you can do, not necessary, but you can take a chisel or say like a fuller or something like this, and you can go along there and strike up the side of this, and it'll create veins. So I'm actually going to do that, but I'll show you. It won't be on the video, but I'll show you sort of the finished product at the end of this video. I went because I needed some assistance. I went and I made the veins with a fuller, so I can show you that. But on this heat, trying to control the heat a little bit, but I'm going to just take it and put it like on the edge of my anvil, and just kind of do some kind of like kissing blows on it. And I like doing this, and you can also grab some like scroll tongs or something, or even a pair of pliers, and heat up both sides of the leaf and bend them in towards each other, or put them right here on the step of the anvil and hit them in the center with a cross peen. The really nice thing to do that looks really organic is take a scrap piece of wood, and you can use like a rounding side of the hammer and set it in the wood, and it'll burn the wood like this, and then you can, at a good hot temperature, you can hit it in there and it'll bow it in, and it gives it a really good organic. But you see, just putting kissing that little tiny bit on that leaf just really made it look more like a leaf, and you can see the veins that I put in there, and they'll pop even more once I put it on the wire brush. Okay, so I got it good and hot. I'm going to cool a part of my piece off just because I don't want to mess my leaf up that I worked on. It may very well crack at this transition, like I was saying. But it really helps to get the penny scroll to work, to have a good consistent taper. So that may be good right there. So I'll want to go ahead and round it off again. All right, you kind of want to work quick if you want this to work right, because when you get down to this thinner stuff, it cools down super fast. So I'll go pretty quick and try to talk along. So I'm going to pull it out. I'm actually going to slap it on the end of the anvil, and it will kind of fold the material over and create like a 90 degree.
And now I'm just going to hold it with another pair of tongs, and I'm just going to curl it into itself. And that crack gave way. So you can kind of understand what I was trying to do there possibly, but it will create this nice, clean, like consistent. It's a really tight scroll, but you can see that where I had that crack at, it just gave way, which is what I thought would happen. All right, coming out of the forge here, straighten it up. Just gonna take it over the anvil. Probably should have cooled my piece off. Hot steel down. That's actually kind of a good little scroll there, but I'm gonna throw it back in and get a little bit tighter. All right, let's see if we can get this a little bit tighter. I'm actually really pleased with that. I normally like a little bit tighter scroll, but I kind of like the looks of that. So I think I'm going to roll with it. So you get one thing that's very popular with these is creating a keychain out of it. So you can loop it kind of back up on itself and kind of rest it on top of the leaf or underneath the leaf and just create a nice little loop. So I'll just do that in the next heat. All right, I'm just going to use a cheap pair of tongs, kind of show you that you don't need anything fancy to do this. So once again, it's up to you on how you want this to look, what the look you're going for. I probably could have used with a little bit more material, but that's okay if you're not going for a super bulky key ring there. So all right, there you have it. It's not perfect, not the best one I've made, but there's parts about it that I really like, parts I would definitely change and I want to clean up. Like I've done before, hit the middle with a cross peen, because bringing these edges of the leaves up really makes it pop. But like I said, I'll post a picture at the end of this because I'm just going to put it on a wire brush and put some oil on it, and it'll look so much better than what it looks now. But as you can see, it's just a simple little key ring that you can crank a bunch of these out and really practice with it and sell them at craft fairs and stuff and kind of get started. It's kind of a beginner / intermediate style way of making a leaf. Most people would probably call it a beginner, but it's still challenging nonetheless. So thanks for watching, and get out there and try it yourself.